Hey everybody, I'm going to do a GCLoader install. A few things that you need to have available. Some multi-size screwdrivers, so I have a bigger one here and then a smaller one. A Nintendo Game Bit driver, some flux, some solder, and then the kit, which is these two items right here. So first things first, let's tear this down. Use your Game Bit driver and remove these 4 screws. This install should be pretty quick. Doesn't take a ton of time. Make sure I got them all. Alright, all 4 screws out. Just flip it over, pull the case off, set the case to the side, and then there's 2 little latches. Just pull that forward and that'll come off. And then I'm going to go ahead and just pull that FFC cable out. That'll come right out. Set that to the side. Same thing on the back. Just unlatch it. Comes right out. Now I'm going to use a power screwdriver here just to speed things up. But there is a ton of screws that go all the way around this. So first we're going to pull the power out, which is just these 2 screws. And then pull the power cord. And it will come out. I guess I need to pull the screws out first. There it comes out. And then we're just going to go all the way around. Pull all the screws out. I feel like it's a little overkill, but it is what it is. Alright, once you have all these out, the disk drive will, actually nope, I gotta remove these 2. So with your small screwdriver, go ahead and pull these front 4 screws out. And these will just come right out. Then the drive will pop right off, like so. We're just going to set the drive to the side for a second, but we will need to get back to that. This GameCube's pretty dusty. Now we need to pull these 6 screws off the heatsink. I'm using my smaller screwdriver. I recommend don't remove the heatsink, just pull the screws out. It will not mess any of the thermal pads up. It actually takes a little bit of force to remove the heatsink, so I don't try and move it or jostle it, just leave it how it is. Alright, this will just pop right out. We're going to set this over. We're going to set the bottom to the side here. So now we need to solder the flex cable on. Just pull out a pair of scissors. So there's the unit itself. Here is a flex cable. Flex cable install is really simple. This lays right on there, like so. Let me zoom in here. Get close as I can get. That's about as close as we can do. So it does say this side up, but it really only goes on one way, so it's kind of hard to mess that up. I'm going to use a little bevel tip here, like this. And I'm going to put my heat, well, my heat's at 315, that's okay, 315C. I'm going to go ahead and put some liquid flux all over this. This flux is more alcohol based and does not corrode if left on the board. So first I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on here. I'm going to hold this down and I'm just going to do one little guy there just to hold it in place, because I want this to sit flush. So I'm going to do another one. I'm going to go over to this corner. I'm going to do another one. Now that the flex cable is pretty flat, I'm just going to go ahead and go pretty fast on it. I'm going to go over here and do this main one first, this big guy. This is a ground layer, so it's going to take a little bit more heat to get to it. But now I'm just going to work down the row. Now I'm trying to touch more of the pin, not necessarily the flex. And then when I touch the pin, I'll push solder in, and the solder will flow down into the pin. Into the flex. Just working my way through. These are spaced really far apart, so I would say it's not impossible to bridge them, but it would take some effort. Now these next set of pads are all grounds, so I'm going a little bit slower because the solder's not really wanting to melt as fast. Back to some grounds. It looks like you can kind of hear my flux running out, so I'm going to put a little dab of flux on there. I'm going to go ahead and seal this. This guy is actually kind of important because it handles a lot of the stress if the flex cable is pulled at all. So it kind of takes the load. So make sure you solder this big fat ground plane over here. I'll go back over here and touch this one up a little bit. And then that all looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Just spray that on, or if you have it in a container form, that's fine. Just gonna take a little toothbrush, scrape on it, just to clean it up, get any residue out. The one reason why you don't really want to use a corrosive flux is the flux will get underneath the flex and you can't actually clean that out unless you bake it. So just make sure that you're using the proper flux. And that won't happen right away. It may take months before there's like some corrosion or it gets nasty and it'll get flaky. So just make sure that you use proper flux. Alright, so that we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and set this back inside the case. Or before we do that, actually, I forgot. So the flex comes out right here. Here, let me zoom back out. So when you set this in, you'll see that the flex comes out right here. So we need to notch this piece of metal. So how I do it is, let's get, now some of these bottoms have screws, some don't, just depends on the model. Alright, so you can see that we need to notch out to here. To here. So I'm just going to take a pair of scissors. I'm just going to cut into it. And then what I'll do is I'm going to take a pair of pliers, which let me go grab real quick. Alright, I'm back with a pair of pliers. Just any pair will work. So you snip off this one little edge right here. And then I'm just going to make this flat. Like so. And I'm just going to pull it down so it's flat with the bottom. The only reason I'm doing that is just so it's easier to cut. So now that you've got this part flattened out, just take your pair of scissors, and cut it. And then I'll take my pliers, kind of straighten this back out a little bit. Looks like I bent my heat sink standoff, so I bend that back. And that's what you have after cutting. Real simple, real fast. Alright, so we'll set this back in. Put our 4 screws back in. Take our, looks like that's still a little bent, so I'm going to bend that a little more. There we go. Because that's, these little standoffs is what the heatsink mounts to, so those need to be in proper order. We'll just put that in there. Touch our 6 heatsinks. There is a little screw boss down here, but it's not necessary to remove it. But I'm actually going to remove it anyway, so I think you should too. Just take a pair of side cutters. There may be a little bit of pressure on that, but if it is, it's very unlikely. I'm just going to snip the screw boss off. Alright, so that's done. We can set that to the side. Now let's take the DVD drive. We're going to go ahead and look at the bottom. We're going to remove all screws. Alright. We actually need the metal shield. We don't need the screws. And your DVD drive can go away. Alright. So now we've got our board here. Open your bag of screws. So we're going to take the 3 long screws that come with it, put all of those through the holes. Oh shoot, I just dropped something. don't drop anything. And then you're going to take, there's going to be 6 of these thumb screws. You're just going to put the screw through the 3 holes and hold it like so. And these act as spacers. Let me see if I can find the screw I just dropped on the floor. Hold on. Alright, found it. Alright, so we've got, let's see, there's one right here. So I've got 3 more and then 2 washers. So the washers, the 2 washers are for one big spot right here. So take one washer and put it closest to the SD card side. Flip this upside down. Alright, it goes like this. It goes in the screws. And then the other washer goes on that same spot. And take the thumb screws. And we're just tightening them. I will take a little pair of pliers and tighten them in a second. They don't need to be super tight, just snug. So I'm just going to take a pair of actually wire cutters here and just use the end of it and just rotate these and just snug them down. Alright, there's our board installed. So we'll take this guy, our bottom piece, back. This will just set right on. And before we put the flex in, let's go ahead and do all of the screws. So obviously don't put one in there. Just going to go around the outside. Oops. Got a little crazy there. You're only doing the 3 insides, leave the 2 outsides. Let's take these guys. Go ahead and put the flex in. Just flip up the flap with your fingernail. The flap just comes up. I'll try and zoom in to show you this. So there's a little flap on this FFC connector. It just flips up, very gentle. Cable just goes right in. Just line it up. See if I can zoom in a little bit better. Alright, there we go. Cable just lines right up, goes in, and then when it's in, push the flap down. Easy as that. Alright, so now we need our power supply. Just going to drop right back in. Let's see here, I got a screw somewhere that I'm not finding. Should go back on the video and look for it. While I'm still looking around here, I'm going to drop the front end. It just goes in and out of an angle. Let me zoom out because I forgot. Just goes in and out of an angle like this. But before you put it down, plug in the FFC cable. This one just pushes right in. There's no lock, no nothing. Just held in by pressure. Just make sure that's in tight or snug. That locks in. Oh, here's my screw. Put the last screw into the power supply. Plug the power supply in. Put the routing back in. There's a little channel for the wires to sit in. Which they're not wanting to sit in. So hold on. There we go. Those are in. So the mod's pretty much installed. I'm going to go ahead and put the top on still, just to complete it. Oh, this is one thing. Put the top on. Hold. I usually, on the left hand side here, as I'm putting the top on, I'm pushing it on that flex cable to make sure I don't pinch it. And then I will seal her back up. Here we go, a couple more. Alright, and we are finished. So next steps is you need to get an SD card, and one that has a work up to work up to 1 terabyte, FAT32, just a standard memory card, and it just plugs right in. It's just a push or push pull operation. So push it in, goes right in. For it to work, you need to have your main boot up file called boot.iso in the root directory. So if you want that to be Swiss into your menu, you can put Swiss as boot.iso, and it will see everything else that you have on the SD card. And that is the installation process. Thanks for watching.